pressed record, so we can get started here.
Okay.
I'll try to drag Barbara in. See how this works. Barbara, are you in there already? There she comes. She's slowly connecting. Then we'll have Barbara DeLong. Hopefully. Still trying. Did I lose my connection? So do you hear me, Stephen?
I sure do.
Okay, so Barbara, are you there?
I think so, yes.
Okay. I have Stephen Woods on the line. I'm going to bring in Rem. 1 second. Okay. Here comes Rem. I've already pressed record, so my people get a lot of extraneous stuff. I don't care. Just have to deal with it. Rem,
Hi, I'm here.
yeah. Hey, welcome. Have you met Barbara DeLong?
I'm not sure if we've spoken or not, but I don't know. Yeah. Hi, Barbara.
Hi.
She has her own show, and sometimes Barbara and I do shows on the Meyer Information. Barbara,
Yeah, I've heard them. Yeah.
oh, okay, good. You still listen to my show sometimes, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
not so much lately because I've just been so busy, but yeah, I've listened to most of them. Yeah.
Great.
I
And
think.
Stephen, you know Barbara, or do you?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Hi, Barbara.
Hi.
Okay.
Oh, hi, Stephen.
Hey, Rem, how you
Didn't know
doing?
you were there. Good.
I thought we had a great show yesterday, but our sound quality was horrific. So I just want to cover just a few things that we talked about, just so in case people just couldn't stand listening to the other recording. First thing I wanted to ask you first, Rem, can you please tell us about, and I know you kind of already talked about it, but you had an actual chance to speak with Billy this time, didn't you? When you were just in Switzerland, what, a month ago or 2 weeks?
Yeah. Beginning of July. Let's see. Most of yeah, pretty much July 5th through July 16th. I was there. And I guess it was on the 15th I got to talk to him at length for about an hour.
That's amazing.
Wow.
Yeah,
So
it was great.
What did you guys talk about?
It was just kind of normal stuff, just
The weather?
like what kind of pets, yeah, people who
You broke up a little bit.
the
Rem.
weather. Hold on a second, I might have to. Just a moment. Can you just give me a moment?
Sure.
I might have to go somewhere else. Just bear with me here.
That's okay.
Hey, so Mark,
Yeah.
if you were able to sit down and talk to Billy, what is the first question you would ask him after you found your voice?
I would ask him, since love is the highest principle in all creation and everything exists through absolute logic, I want to know the absolute logic through which everything exists. That would be one of the questions I would ask him.
That's a good one.
I actually, do you know the guy that does the program Nature's Way?
Yes.
He asked me for like 10 or 15 questions for Billy because he's trying to go over there to interview him. I don't know if he's going to have any luck or not, but
Okay, I'm back.
yeah. So tell
And
us about your discussion with Billy. You were talking with him, right?
Yeah, so it really wasn't very deep, because I know that if you want to ask him some really deep questions, he would like to answer you as best as he can, and but unfortunately my German isn't good enough to be able to just dive right in and talk about some really, really deep things. So,
Let me ask you a quick question. Sorry, why it's fresh in my mind. I've noticed that too. Like I remember Billy's interview, his 2011 interview.
Yeah.
Remember that one is just like so profound, and all this information is like coming out of him, and you're blown away. But he was speaking in German, and it
Yeah.
was subtitles, so he can't really do that in English, can he?
Well, I mean, if you speak slowly and you speak in terms that he can understand, he has a pretty extensive English vocabulary, but I don't know how extensive it is.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely can't articulate everything I would like to articulate, and at the speed that is comfortable for me, and have him, and expect him to be able to just respond right back.
Right.
So, and then another thing is that I really didn't want to bug him about like really weighty things. I really wanted to kind of just have a normal conversation with him, and I felt like he would appreciate that. And I've met other people who are who are like famous in some respects or another, and talked with them, and it's I find that the guard is down more. It's less. It's just more relaxing to just talk about normal things. So I mean, we talked about pets that we've had, and
Really?
and yeah, and like I told them about my girlfriend and her daughter who we're raising, and we just had. I mean, there were a few interesting things, but I mean, mostly. Excuse me. Mostly it was a really normal conversation, and it's nice to when you're there, you can either be thinking about all of the contact notes and all of the amazing things in the in the information, or you can also just appreciate the place for what it is, and enjoy the company of all these people, and just take in how peaceful of a place it is. And it really, the Semjase Silver Star Center is more of a botanical garden than anything. It's just filled with all these different kinds of trees and plants from all over the world, and Billy himself is kind of a master gardener.
Wow.
Technically, I mean, he's really knowledgeable about plants and how to prune things correctly, and how much water they need, and how much sunlight things need. And I remember different contact reports where he was being told about some things like that, like this kind of, some trees need to be spaced apart this amount, and the strawberries need to be here, and this needs to be there. But I think it's, to sum it up, it's a place where it's kind of the epicenter of maybe the most important movement in all of world history, past, present, and future. And it's also kind of mundane. You get the sense that, like, when you're there, it's just, it's not it's not like something that needs to be like worshipped or like treated like with so much reverence that it gets out of balance. It's just kind of normal being there. It just feels really comfortable. It's really peaceful, and everybody gets along pretty well. There are people have their differences there, and that's all acknowledged and accepted. But generally, it's peaceful, and it feels. I this time being there, I got the feeling of like mundane,
Well,
and so anyway.
Let me ask you this. Billy's a little bit older now. Do you think that plays a role in any of this? Is it more difficult for him at 81 to break into these very deep and profound things?
I don't think so.
Oh, you think he's just as intense?
Sharp as a tack.
Sharp as a tack. Okay, that's what I wondered.
Yeah, I mean, he does forget things though, but he's very sharp. He's agile. He'll walk around. He's got good posture. he's very, very with it. You know, he's not like some people who are a little kooky. He's just really, he's very present, and
Did you get the feeling he was waiting for something?
not sure what you mean.
Just anticipatory, as though he was kind of in between stage of activity, and so he was waiting for something to trigger a new beginning or a new direction or a new level or a new something.
No, not really. I mean, I know that when I was there, he had a shoulder injury recently, and he was just kind of, in that sense, he was kind of like just waiting for his shoulder to recover so that he could write again. So, and he just kind of laughed, and he's like, "It's an experience."
You know what I really like about it also, Rem, is the work ethic. You know, his personal work ethic and the work ethic of the people there, it just seems to be very admirable.
They have great work ethic. Yeah, I mean, they don't work themselves into the dust. They have a healthy amount of work, so they do what they feel is necessary to be done, and they also appreciate their downtime. So they all make it kind of they make a point of like having lunch at noon, or like taking a coffee break at 3, and like being done basically by 5, so that you can do other things before you go to bed, and not like working your ass off until you have to go to bed and then doing the same thing in the morning,
But just having that balance and that ability to produce like they do. I mean, just the amount of books that he's written, but just that overall vitality that I think is important. It's interesting.
Yeah, and I feel like every time I come back from there, I feel like I have a better grasp on what I need to do in my life for my life to be successful. And I feel like I also can think clearly. I feel like I have more motivation and drive, and it's good to go there, because it's you kind of see an example of how things can be. It's not like you have to do everything like they do there, but it's just one option, recommendation.
How many people were at the center at that time?
Well, let's see. I mean, it's like it's a private residence technically, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's so Billy lives there. His wife, or I guess Ava is not. I don't know if she's his wife, but she's his life partner. And they have a daughter, Selena, and there's a few core group members who, like Bernadette, who lives there. There's a few other people who live on the property. I'm not 100% sure of who lives there and who doesn't. Got some ideas of who lives there, but I would say probably like 8 to 10 people, and from a financial perspective, it makes sense, because it's an expensive place to live, and if you can pool your resources, it's pretty smart to have a place like that where just even from that one perspective, that everybody can live a little bit more cheaply, and also be in a community together where they know and trust the people in their surroundings, and they can also talk about these things and grow as individuals.
You mentioned Bernadette. She wrote the book on Nocodamian, right?
Yeah.
Have you talked to her about that at all?
I did, actually.
Tell us about that.
So, I guess, let's see. I have to really think about that. Nocodamian was, so let's see. There was some confusion. I know there was some confusion on whether Nocodamian came back from Athrsata 3 times, or some people were saying that for a while, and I think that the Nocodamian personality was the one she gave me the number of years he lived, but I don't remember. I think it was like 1,200 years, lived to be about 1,200 years old or somewhere around there. And that was the personality of the person who, Nocadamian personality was the personality who lived before he transferred into the half material state, or the level of the high council thing. Like that was like his most previous human physical body before going into the higher levels. And then going back, because the Nocadamian, the spirit form within Billy was also in all of these other people in the past. Most previously before Billy was Rasputin and Enoch, Elijah, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Emmanuel, and Mohammed, and as well as some other people like Mozart, Galileo, Mendelssohn, Socrates, I think, and so all these are all more recent personalities of this Nocadamian spirit form. But I think there were a number of she said that there were a number of people who were called Nocadamian who were carrying that same spirit form. So I think there were 3 Nocadamians.
It's kind of like Hanok.
Yeah, kind of like that. And she said that back in those times, whenever Nocadamian was alive as a person, that the name Nocadamian was rather common, kind of like John or something. So that was just there were probably other people walking around with that name.
Hey, Ram, did they ever mention did he ever have any female personalities? Just out of curiosity.
Never mentioned it, but I'm sure he has. They say that anytime that there's a prophet, it's better for it to be a male personality because of the hostilities and in the world that we live in, it's so much more difficult to be a prophet as a female, because people don't take him seriously enough as a male. Imagine if he was a female,
right?
Yeah.
You ask any woman of the problems that they've dealt with, and ask the male side. They're in the same field. Like we see it all over the place, so and that's in today's world. Imagine back in the day when well, I don't know how it was a few 100,000 years ago, but
Well, there was a time when women did rule.
I guess, yeah.
We go way back to the goddess. She was worshipped as the one. So there have been time frames, not lately though, I'll give you that. But there was a time in history when the goddess was definitely the Godhead.
Sure.
One of the things I wanted to bring up, and maybe you could comment on this, Rem, is that Nocadamian was, I think, originally from a planet named Sadr, Sadr, which was something like 3 billion light years from Earth. I just wanted to make sure everyone kind of realized that, people that listen to this, archive, we're not talking about anybody that walked around. That personality was never on the Earth, correct?
I don't think so. I don't think so, but I'm not sure. But I know that Nocadamian had created different peoples. How though?
Where did Bernadette get this information? Did she get it from Billy?
Yeah, she got it from Billy. She's known Billy for. I would just deduce that she had gotten it all from Billy, so she wouldn't be able to find out for herself through her own meditation or anything like that. But she's known Billy for a really long time, 40, 45 years, maybe 50 years. I don't know.
I think that would be a a great book to have translated into English, man. Wow. Wouldn't that be great? Oh,
Yeah, they'll all be translated eventually. Who knows if they'll be translated in our lifetimes? But I know that the Canada group is translating, or they have already translated the book Arahat Athersata, and I think they're just collecting funds to have it published into book form right now.
wow.
I don't know how far along they are on that or not.
You know, I was reading somewhere that Svath was, in his previous personality, was a friend or an associate of one of Billy's previous personalities. I don't know if it was Nocodamian or not. Do you remember anything along those lines?
I don't remember anything specific, but I'm pretty sure that Billy and then all of his contacts, as well as other people involved in the mission, all go back as friends in previous personalities way back throughout time.
That is phenomenal. I just think that's really, really cool.
Maybe not always friends, but at least associates, like or acquaintances or something, right?
Exactly.
Working toward the same thing.
Now, he lives at Hinterschmidruti. So there is a village like in front of his property called Schmidruti.
Yeah, that's correct. So
Is it very big? Is it small? What
oh,
does it look like?
it's so small. It's like it's like 10 buildings or something. It's or maybe a little more, or maybe a little less. But it's like you wouldn't think of it as a town. It's more of just like a few buildings, and then where the Freihof is, that you turn into that drive, and then you go down the drive toward the forest, and then you pass a few other people's houses, and then you go through the paved road turns into a gravel driveway, and then it curves around through some trees and bushes, and then you pass all these log piles, and like they're really neatly stacked logs with like little roofs they've built for them, and thousands of logs.
Really?
And tons. Just like for firewood, it's all firewood. And then this is just the main visitor lot for the Semyazi Silver Star Center, and that's Hinterschmidruti is just down the driveway a little bit further, which is basically Hinterschmidruti is basically the center and the accompanying buildings, which are so.
I see. I didn't know that. So did you land in Zurich and then drive to the center, rent a car or whatever?
Yeah, I rented a car, drove there. It takes about 45 minutes or so, something like that.
Are you on the other side of the road than what we drive on?
No, it's normal. It's like or normal for us, so it's just on the right side. And it's pretty similar to driving here, actually. And especially if you have GPS, it's no problem to get there.
I didn't want to dominate the conversation. I didn't even know we were going to go this path. I think it's really interesting. Stephen or Barbara, jump in if you have any questions.
Okie doke.
Okay.
Or thoughts.
Well, the thing about it is it's nice to get a grasp on the fact that these are real people. It's a real place. This isn't, it's not imaginary. It's not like, it's not an illusion or anything like that. They're actually there. So I've seen some people online who are like, is this really real? Is he really real? Is he really there? Is that a real place? And yes, it's real. They're really there.
There, I think it's in Contact Report 10 and 18 as well. There's this section on materialistic thinking. And the materialistic thinker, for example, would say, they would be like irrationally skeptical. They would say, well, you don't have a manuscript for the Talmud of Emmanuel anymore, and why would these? Of course, then you could explain it to him. Why would these extraterrestrials contact him? I mean, of course, then again, as I say, you could explain it to them. But this you know how they always attack one little tiny little thing on one photograph that doesn't look right to them. So they want to throw the whole thing out because of one little strange little, who knows, light refraction on a photograph. I find these people to be so bizarre. I mean, they really do. And unfortunately, so many people in our country and our world think this way. They don't come. Do you know
It's
what
black
I mean?
and white. It's black and white thinking.
Yeah.
Very common. And there's James Deardorff, who was a professor at Oregon State University, who I think he passed away in the last few years, actually. But he, in the 90s, was he found out about the Talmud Emmanuel. He was a professor in theology, and thought about it as another Bible hoax, and he wanted to investigate it. And I think he ended up finding over 300 examples of why the Talmud Emmanuel is actually more likely the original Gospel of Matthew, and as instead of it being the other way around, as it being a hoax. He's found more evidence of it being likely to be the original, and that you can read on his website is www.tjresearch.com. I think that's the website. And
You know, I interviewed him a few times.
oh, really?
Oh, yeah. And just before he died, and he was still alive when the new one came out, and he did not like the new one, which I can't imagine how you could possibly take that stance. But yeah, I mean the new one is so superior in terms of the translation and all this explanation that Billy has in there. There were many things, and that's what I've been reading lately, and you guys can jump in on this. There were many things that Isa Rashid, he just wouldn't write down because of his religious background. He just couldn't make himself write things down. He was like, there was a mental block. Do you remember reading that?
I do.
Yeah. Please comment.
Well, he was seeing things in the what he was working on that didn't correspond with his religious beliefs, and or he would translate things based on his knowledge, and and skew it maybe a little bit more toward the religious end instead of being neutral. So I don't have it in front of me, but what were some of the examples, like using the word guardian angels? Or
I got something right here that I'll read. And Barbara, you probably have the original or the first Talmud. The new one is gigantic. I'll just say that. So
Then I do indeed have the first then.
okay, yeah, this one's massive. This is Patah speaking to Billy, and he says, and unfortunately that corresponds to the facts, but it is not surprising if it is considered that Isa Rashid was a Christian believer who was not able to free himself from his confused and irrational belief, not even after he had cast aside his lay priesthood. Unfortunately, the rule is, with regard to a religious or even a religious sectarian belief, that this affects the genes, and from this side acts so strongly on the decisive temporal lobe that the belief cannot be acted against. The once established belief exerts such a compelling power over the intellect and rationality that these are simply immobilized and rendered inoperable. This means that the human being, if he or she has fallen prey to a religious belief, is no longer master of his or her senses with regard to decision-making ability concerning the belief and all its connections. Thus, no thoughts based on intellect or rationality can be maintained anymore because of the belief with regard to this, as well as regarding all that which is connected with it. Because the religious belief makes the human being extensively biased and its slave, bear with me, this is really important to read. Consequently, he or she moves unconsciously at every moment in his or her belief, namely that the underlying anxiety in case he or she thinks or does something against his or her belief, and if corresponding feelings also arise from the unconscious thoughts of the anxiety, then the human gets bogged down even more in his or her belief and finds no way to free himself from it. Precisely, this was also the case with Ether Rashid. Consequently, the anxiety of writing something other than what his belief allowed him was predominant in him. So also his intellect and rationality in this regard were caught in the jumble of his belief and could not prevail. Thus he was able to act in accordance with the given truth in order to translate the scroll truthfully. He was not able to act because his belief had held his thoughts and feelings by force as a vice. He could not therefore make himself free from his belief because he was truthfully a slave of belief. But what I explain to you with my words, you yourself know consequently, and it is nothing new for you. Now, maybe later I can read another section which explains the way a person can free themselves from belief. And it's kind of very interesting because I did this accidentally, not knowing. And that's what freed me from my beliefs. So, but does any of that resonate with you, Rem?
Oh, definitely. And so, I mean, that's, I mean, one of the main goals of the spiritual teaching. And by the way, like no. And it takes a lot of mental work to free ourselves from belief.
Yeah.
And it takes a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And but that's why one of the main goals of the spiritual teaching, which Billy writes down, and which can be found in nature as the creational natural laws and recommendations. But that's one of the main goals of the spiritual teaching is to deactivate cult mentality and religious thinking and beliefs, and to help the human being get back on track with the natural way of thinking, which is evolutive, healthy, self-sufficient, free of vices, logical, action-oriented, I'd say, creative, wise, far-sighted, what else? Aware, responsible, and oriented towards love, peace, harmony, and freedom in every respect. So,
You used a word there that I think, really needs to be underlined, because people who are really indoctrinated into any major religion have theoretically joined a cult.
Yeah, exactly. And so this is the whole goal of what Billy and Figu are trying to do, is to help set people back straight with the natural way, and the creational natural laws. And so to the person who's acquainted with the creational natural laws, the might of one's own thoughts and one's own initiative become the decisive factor in everything in life. So not like God or like a religion or this or that, something outside of you, but it's your own thoughts. So then ultimately your own destiny is in your own hands. That's the goal right there.
Stephen, you got any comments, Stephen?
Oh, I'm just taking all this in, and I've got a lot of things I'm processing here. But
a lot of Billy's material goes hand in hand with Neville Goddard's material. Are any of you familiar with him?
No.
He died in the 70s, but his philosophy was that we have within each of us that spark of creation, and that we can do anything that we want to do if we use, he said the mind, but really I do believe he was meaning the spirit. And his material is fascinating in that it dovetails so amazingly into everything that Billy Meier says about creation and about love and about Goddard wasn't so much into the love as he was into the power of the mind and how the spirit can work within to create anything that we want it to.
Stephen, is that related to that other book you sent me at all? Is that other book also an author that is somewhat similar to Billy, or was that a different book that you were telling me?
That's a different book, but
Okay.
his principles are similar. Yeah, as far as in many aspects, yeah. I won't get into it here because it'll take us too far off topic. But yeah,
Now,
So the thing that I like about Billy, though, and Barbara, I agree with what you said. I think that is good, and but the only thing that I would say is that I'd recommend, based on my talks with Willem Mondria over in Switzerland, he would recommend to try to keep the use of the term mind at a minimum, because he says that it's a rather unclear and precise term in English, and he would call it a fuzzy term, and there's no single term in German for it. And that's what I like about the Billy stuff, is it's so precise.
now,
one thing that I'm sorry.
Go ahead. That's fine.
One thing that was striking me, like, was striving, right? And our spiritual consciousness has to strive against our material consciousness. It seems like at this point in our development, just like we have to strive in this, lifetime, right, to understand these principles. At this point for us, I look at it and say, how often do I listen to my spiritual impulses? We're so tied into our physical senses that do we really listen to those impulses and or do we fight against them?
Well, it's very interesting because I think our subconscious is programmed with negative thinking, and it literally, if we let it take over, we will be in negative thinking 24/7, and it will cause all kinds of problems in our life. So that's why I'm always into this mode of trying to add back in some positive thinking in order to take those negative thoughts and kind of neutralize them. Because I've read somewhere, and this is like scientists are doing this research now, people like Dr. Bruce Lipton and people like that. Most people have about 10,000 negative thoughts a day. It's outrageous.
That book I sent to you, that really is the main crux of it.
Really?
Right, yeah.
Wow, I'll enjoy that book. I'll be reading that like crazy then. Because I think that's the big fight. That's the big chore. At least
What
It's-
book was that?
it's called
Sorry.
what, The Four Directions?
4 Agreements, yeah.
The Four Agreements. Okay.
Oh, that's that book.
But
So
Mark,
Mhm.
Mark, don't we come in with a clean slate as far as conscious, subconscious, and that it's our environment, it's the people around us. I mean, our brain absorbs information like crazy, and it absorbs the positive and the negative.
The first 7 years of our life, we're in a theta state.
Right.
And mostly it's the subconscious that's absorbing everything. And we're absorbing things from our parents, and we're absorbing things from society. And look how twisted and confused and corrupt our society is.
Well, yeah, you're talking about adults here, but a child who is brought up surrounded by love and with all of I think that we have exposure to many different things, and we at this point really choose what to absorb and what not to. Or if we absorb something that is of a negative nature, we can dispose of it as well.
We can now if we reprogram ourselves.
Yeah.
Our default thinking is very negative because we were all raised by parents that didn't have any of the spiritual teaching, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, so
Right.
think about that, it's,
We inherited lies and things wherein there is no profit.
say that again. That was interesting.
That's actually from the Bible, unfortunately, but
But it's so interesting. Marianne, you were talking about Marianne's husband, right? Rem? William?
Yeah, Willem.
Willem. Marianne, about 2 or 3 years ago, sent me an email about some of Bruce Lipton's stuff that I should look into it. And it took me about 3 years to get around to doing it. And I wish I'd have done it sooner. And Stephen, I think you actually read his Biology of Belief book, correct?
Yes.
And I don't know if Barbara and Rem are familiar with his work, but what Bruce Lipton did basically was he was doing research on stem cells. And this was like in the 70s, and he found that a stem cell would turn into a muscle cell. Stem cells are embryonic cells. So he found that a stem cell would turn into a muscle cell if it was put into a petri dish with the right kind of solution. He found that a stem cell would become a bone cell if it was put into the right environment. And he found that the same thing with a stem cell could turn into a fat cell depending on the contents of the petri dish. So what he came away from that with is that the genetics is not the main factor, but it's the environment, meaning that your thoughts affect your blood chemistry. And your blood chemistry is what controls your health. And again, that it all comes back from the thoughts is kind of where I'm going with all this. Does any of that make sense?
Yeah.
I think it does too.
So I think based and free will is something that people either choose to use or to not utilize as much. So some people can radically change their DNA through radically changing their thoughts and radically changing their actions, and almost break away and have pretty significantly different DNA than they did when they were born. And then some people can, the way I understand it all is that some people can also just not choose to change much at all in their lifetimes, and they're pretty much stuck with the same thing that they had when they were little. But
isn't there more to this than just learning a philosophy? It's embracing and then manifesting that philosophy.
It's
unless you manifest it, it doesn't count.
Yeah, it doesn't work unless you can change the programming of your subconscious. And you can only do that through repetition. And they've got some other techniques now. But you're right. You can read self-help books until you're blue in the face. And it's not going to help unless you take that effort of... Now, the way I've done it is, or the way I'm trying to do it, is through repetition.
Affirmations.
Affirmations, plus memorizing certain lines in his books, which helped me a lot. But there's other ways to do it now, and Bruce Lipton talks about it. I don't remember what they all are, but...
Now, Mark, wouldn't you consider that every step that you're taking, that's striving? So every striving that we have that goes towards the creational laws and recommendations, creation itself is going to assist you in that process. As you're working towards it, that's where you get that, your spirit will impulse you for the desires of creation, which will assist you in meeting those needs.
I read that somewhere today, I think, even. That's a very good point you make. Extremely good point. Interesting.
What was I going to say? I was going to say something about that. Oh, man.
Don't you just hate that?
What were you saying, Barbara? Maybe you could clue me back into what it just went away.
My issue with all of this, and it's not an issue, it's just an observation, that you can be a parrot or you can be a prophet. If you just repeat what you've read without living it and manifesting it within your reality, you're just a parrot and it doesn't count. And it doesn't matter how many times you go chapter and verse, it
Exactly.
doesn't change your life.
No, that. Now I remember what I was going to say. So yeah, no, I know that there are even people who are studying this material that Billy writes who have a tough time applying it, and who I've seen, as well have problems with it and not really make too many changes in their lives, because it's all up to the individual. So everybody has these problems, and it's okay. Some people mess their lives up and some people don't, and it's all okay. We're all just learning, I guess you don't have to take it so seriously, but you do in other ways.
I truly believe that without laughter, you don't get enlightenment and you don't get to where you need to be.
That's interesting.
Sure. Yeah. Why not?
Well, yeah, and I would imagine Billy is that way too. Though I've never met the man, it seems to me that in spite of the fact that he's gone through some of the most profound experiences that any human being could have, there has to be laughter in his life, and if there's not laughter in his life, there's something missing.
I can now speak from personal experience that he has a great sense of humor. He loves to laugh, and he's so jovial, And I mean, we were having a lot of great. We were just telling jokes and thinking about this and that, and we had some serious moments as well. And like I told him that I think I really appreciate everything that you've taught me about, or everything that I've read, which you've written about death, because it helped me really cope with my father's death, which happened last summer, 2017, and it all really helped. And he just goes, that's my job. You're welcome.
Did he say that? That is great.
Yeah, and so, and I also what else did I mean? Then we were also laughing about like the devil and like Hitler, and Billy was like, maybe he is in hell. According to billions of people on this planet, he is in hell. So, right. But
what would be really interesting is if he had reincarnated already.
No, I think he has. I think somebody said that Hitler has reincarnated and is like a factory worker or something, like in Germany or I don't know.
Is that right?
I don't
Just
know.
Kind
yeah,
of
I think that's
an unknown background personality, huh?
Yeah.
That's
maybe,
interesting.
Maybe still a strong personality like he was in the last lifetime, but not as much influence, I don't think. It doesn't seem to be that way. What else did we joke about it? Hell is only on Earth. It exists in the center of the planet. It's in all of the universe. Hell is just on the Earth.
That's so great. I love it.
But anyway, he likes to joke, and backing up quite a ways in the conversation, I wanted to say something else to something that Stephen had said, that you're talking about the 4 agreements, and people have talked about that Don Miguel Ruiz had actually borrowed, if you will, those tenets from Billy's literature early on, or even plagiarized.
Well, that's what I told Mark about too, because there's a section called the Smoky Mirror, and I'm like, what? That sounds just like the excerpts from Billy's early life.
Yeah. So there's actually a paper that somebody has written. I think it's on the FIGU Switzerland website in German, about the 4 agreements and about how he stole that from Billy's work. But I'd have to go back and check it out. It's in German, and I've only read just a part of the crude Google Translate version of it. So,
but that's one of the things I thought about too, Raman. But I'm looking at, just to give it benefit of the doubt, right? Where I think the information's good, and if he plagiarized and he didn't admit to it, well, that's kind of a bad thing for sure, right? But I also know through his information that it's talked about when people on different sides of the earth have the same idea at the same time. Does that make sense? And so I'm like, is that part of this too? Is that possible that maybe he was getting information from the storage banks and releasing it? I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah. And another good thing is that if that book is helping people, then that's
Right.
that's good.
Exactly, because it does read differently than Billy's material, but it does have some
Totally.
good advice, that you can put to your life. So it's just another source of information. But yeah.
I want to switch gears real quick to the Talmud, if we could. It's one of the things we did talk about yesterday a little bit, and I think Rem had some really interesting things to bring up. So my first question would be, can you tell us about, and I don't mean to just put you on the spot here, Rem. I mean, this is a discussion, but we have two men named, as you said yesterday, Judas in the Talmud. Not Judas, not two Judases, but two Judas.
I think that's how they would pronounce it over in Switzerland, and maybe that's how it was pronounced back then when these events were occurring. Judas. Yeah.
Ishkarioth.
Judas Iskariot.
Okay. Judas Ishkarioth, who was the friend of Emmanuel.
Emmanuel. Yeah.
Is it Emmanuel or Emmanuel?
Emmanuel.
Emmanuel.
But I mean that's just a technicality. Maybe I don't know if that's important or not, but it could be just a technical thing. But I mean, Emmanuel is fine. Also, I mean, Billy will say Emmanuel, but according to also what he has said that back in his time, people pronounced it Emmanuel, but Emmanuel is fine too. So
Okay. So one of the other things that I always say is there was no letter J in any of the earth languages in the ancient world, and some argue that the letter J first appeared around 1550. But Emmanuel also taught the teaching of the prophets as well, right? And Judas never wrote down any of that teaching. So there was a whole body of teaching, right? That there was too much information. He couldn't write it down, correct?
yeah, it's just so much. I mean, Judas actually he wrote down what he could remember, and I think he wrote it. I think Emmanuel actually dictated some of it to him as well in person. But it's just the teaching is so extensive and comprehensive that you could never write it all down at that point in time. And it was already foreseen that at a distant time in the future that there would be a time when there are technical means available to and that there would be a last prophet in Emmanuel's line who would write the teaching down once and for all posterity. And so they didn't really feel like it was necessary to, and it also really wasn't possible to write as much down as maybe some people would have hoped, right?
So tell us about the other Judas, the Judas Ishariot. That's terrible pronunciation. Forgive me.
I don't know.
Iscariot?
Iscariot. Ishariot.
Now he was the son of a Pharisee, right?
Yes. Yes.
And I believe his father was a member of a sect that was in resistance against the Romans. Was that correct?
Well, I can't confirm or deny that part of it, but
Okay. And I think the other Judas and his father, they were really out to silence Emmanuel?
Well, that seems to be the case, that there was that, and it's something that I think about sometimes, which is kind of sad, that you have all these people walking around today who love Jesus and they really want to be like the person who we're talking about is actually Emmanuel. But you got all these people and all these religions, billions of people all over the world who really wanted to be like Jesus and know more about him. And I think it's just too bad that they all found out about him through exactly the means by which Jesus or Emmanuel did not want his story to be portrayed. Do you see what I'm saying? It's like like the church that exists today was still existing is just a new version of the same church that existed back in Emmanuel's time, where Emmanuel was teaching the creational laws, and the church was teaching their church stuff. They're teaching their Old Testament stuff, and then they stole Emmanuel's story, turned his name into Jesus, and then changed some things around, and people today are learning about it, and it's just too bad that they're learning about it through the exact thing that Emmanuel would not have liked them to learn about it.
Well, I don't think he intended that there be a church. I mean, first of all, there were no churches then.
Right.
There were just temples, but I don't.
Temples, but
Yeah.
still, but you know what I'm saying? Like the belief system which is in place now is also like a cousin or like a descendant of like the belief system that was in place back then too. And it's like all the same bigwigs and Pharisees, who are also all men, right? They're all like, there's no women power in the church.
Right. But he wasn't preaching a religion. He was preaching a philosophy, a way of life.
Yeah. He's talking about the nature, right?
Yeah.
And the natural way of living. And another thing is that when I was in Switzerland, I heard somebody say that the spiritual teaching, you don't actually need it. I mean, you can find out about it on your own, but in this world, we kind of do need it, but you don't, because we're so confused because of all these religions. But you don't actually need it. That's one thing that Billy would even say as well. And Atlantis his son was telling me this, that you don't, or maybe he was telling Daniel this, and Daniel relayed that to me, Daniel Cooper. But that you don't actually need the spiritual teaching, but it does help if you want to speed up your evolution. And if you want to live naturally, then yes, it helps. But it's not necessary, like life and death, right?
Rem, is that kind of the reason why it was given to us? Maybe is to counteract the effects of religion, because it's been so dramatic that we had to have something, dramatic, if you will, as far as a teaching, very clear, to rise up against, to have a counter polarity from what religion has done. Just like Muslim faith was brought online to minimize the Christian, to have something to go against it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it does, and I think it does. It does act as a counter to types of religious like there's religious thinking, like which is like being controlled by prejudices. Instead of remaining neutral and impartial, there's like holding on to preconceived notions. I would say is probably a part of that type of thinking. The desire for revenge and retaliation, or the desire to be saved by a miracle, and instead of taking responsibility for your thoughts and actions.
It's like these harsh words have to be given because of the state of the affairs that we're in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, right. And then I guess, such a big cult religion was created after Emmanuel's time, that which was Christianity. That the next personality after Emmanuel was Muhammad, and Muhammad knew that his religion would also turn into that. He also knew that what he was teaching would be turned into a cult, but he basically knew that it had to happen that way to counteract Christianity.
Exactly.
Otherwise, Christianity would have been a completely
Run rampant.
world dominating thing. So, but the whole point of what we're talking about here with Figu and the creational natural laws is countering people's willingness to deny their responsibility of their own circumstances, which we create. We create our own circumstances by our own thinking, but religions like to make it about something or someone else, like a god or even the universe, right? So we have people who are infected by religious thinking who are not actually involved in religions. People would say that, sorry.
Well, oh, sorry to interrupt you. You know, one of the interesting things, a lot of these televangelists are pretty smooth. They say, look, send your donation to me and I'll make sure that you get the blessing from God. It kind of works, that way.
Yeah.
I mean, Kenneth Copeland's a perfect example. He's got two $20 million Learjets now, and I think Joel Osteen's worth about $40 million. And so it's kind of interesting how they kind of have this extravagant lifestyle and these gigantic houses and
Air-conditioned dog houses.
It's so outrageous. I just, it's just amazing the way it is now. Anyway, go ahead. I interrupted. Sorry.
But the negative aspects of thinking, which come out of religion and belief systems, are, they're prevalent throughout all of society. It's not just within religions. There's people who are infected by these terrible modes of thinking, and without even realizing it. And Figu is here to kind of counter that. And by definition, it's a free community of interests. It's right there in the name. Which means that none of the members are coerced into joining, and they're all there under their own free volition. So, and one of the core things that is taught is that the human being must be completely responsible for all of his or her thoughts, feelings, and actions, and must be held accountable for them. So Billy's not a cult leader, and like so many know-it-alls like to claim, for he strictly opposes cult mentality and religious thinking, and belief is almost a taboo word in his vocabulary, but he advocates for each individual human being to use critical thinking and to take personal responsibility for their own lives, and to not believe what he says, to like investigate for yourself. And
The Buddha has a wonderful saying, and it's it's kind of like, just come and see.
Yeah.
Come and see if it works for you. If it works for you, fine. If it doesn't, keep moving,
Yeah, it's great. Exactly.
One of the things that you're talking about, wrong modes of thinking.
Yeah.
Our society is so filled with those. I mean, one of the big things we have is this victim mentality now. Like, I'm the victim of, sexism, or I'm the victim of racism, or I've been the victim of fat shaming, or I'm gender neutral, so you have to use my pronouns. You can't call me a man or a woman. You have to call me, I don't know what their pronouns are, but we have a strange society, don't we? It's getting weirder all the time.
Yeah.
And is going to keep getting weird.
I agree.
That sounds to me like the negative rotating thoughts, instead of pulling out of that and moving on.
Well, don't you think too that it's out of fear? People are realizing that what used to work no longer works,
Hmm.
and they're seeking something that will give them the security and the answers they're looking for.
Like they need a safe
Sure.
space. They want their safe space. That's the other thing now. You know, they have these safe spaces.
Yeah,
You
right.
know, you know, as the social justice warriors do. You know, I guess you can't say certain things if you're in the safe space. I don't know. Anyway, I'm being sarcastic. So,
Well, today things are changing, and I do feel that people are questioning more. They're looking more at our history and finding things in our history they didn't realize were there. And we're coming to a time where consciousness is truly expanding, and because of that, Billy's material, Billy's material makes a great deal of sense. The only problem is it takes away a source. It makes you responsible for everything. And a lot of people don't like that.
I very much agree. Very, very well said. You know, I a lot of times keep my show to an hour. If you guys really, really want to keep going, we can. But we could wrap it up now and pick up a week from now or whatever. Or if you had anything you really wanted to get out, I'd say get it out now. And
Sure. I mean, when I was over there in Switzerland, it's really clear talking to Billy in person. I've been by the way, I've been there for that was my third time being there, and I guess technically my fifth time in a way, because I went in 2012, and then I took a few weeks in Europe, and then I went back, and then that was kind of how it was this year as well. I went last year, but it was only for a few days. But Billy does not want to be an object of special attention, and it's clear to anyone who's ever. It should be clear to anyone who's spent time reading his literature, but to really be around him, he's clearly not seeking attention, and is careful who he makes contact with right up front, and he's clearly not a megalomaniac, and he's clearly not crazy. He offers recommendations and advice, but he doesn't dictate, and he remains focused on his task as a teacher through his literary work, and he lives a private life out of the limelight and out of the public. So, I mean, he really embodies everything he teaches, which is you can't really say that for a lot of people who try to teach people things. You know.
any other thoughts, guys? Barbara, Stephen?
I just
Nope.
want to say thanks for bringing me on, and it's always a great time.
Yeah, this has been a great show. I just love these sessions. I so appreciate it, and hopefully next weekend we can continue to do these shows. And I really appreciate all of you guys for joining me this afternoon. So, Barbara, please put this on your website, and I'll get it uploaded here in a little bit. You guys have a great evening.
You too, Mark.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Barbara.